My name is Fiona Mercer. I'm 34, an ER nurse, and a single mom. Last Christmas Eve, while I was chest deep in a cardiac arrest at Riverside Community Hospital, my in-laws made my 10-year-old daughter stand in a corner of their dining room for 6 hours, hungry, shaking, with a handwritten cardboard sign hung around her neck that read, "Family Disgrace." Her crime? Telling the truth at the dinner table. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I drove home, put my daughter to bed, and opened a box I hadn't touched in 3 years, my late husband's files. What I found inside changed everything. 48 hours later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing, not with apologies, with panic. Before I go on, if this story speaks to you, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear what happened next. And while you're here, drop a comment. Where are you listening from right now, and what time is it there? Now let me take you back to December 24th, the night the lights on our little Christmas tree were still blinking when I got the call from the hospital. I had set the table for two. That was something I'd started doing after Ryan died, making our little traditions feel intentional instead of lonely. Paper crackers from the dollar store, cranberry candles Lily picked out herself, a lasagna cooling on the counter because Lily once said turkey was boring, and I'd never argued with that logic. The tree was 5 feet tall, pre-lit, slightly crooked. Lily had wrapped every branch in silver tinsel until it looked like a disco ball having an identity crisis. I loved it. We were 15 minutes from sitting down when my phone rang. The caller ID said Riverside ER, and my stomach dropped before I even answered. "Fiona, it's Tanya. Greg collapsed at home, loss of consciousness. They're bringing him in now. We're down to 2 nurses tonight. I need you." Greg was our charge nurse. Tanya wouldn't call on Christmas Eve unless it was real. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the lasagna, holding the phone so tight my knuckles ached. Lily was in her room, putting on the red velvet dress I'd hand-stitched the hem on because the store version was 2 inches too long. She'd made a gift box for her grandmother, painted it herself, gold and green, with a card that said, "To Grandma Judith, Merry Christmas, love Lily," in her careful 5th-grade cursive. There was no one else to call. My parents lived in Oregon. Grace was already working the floor. The only option within 10 minutes of our house was Judith's annual Christmas dinner, 20 relatives, a honey-glazed ham, and the kind of warmth that always had conditions attached. I dialed Judith's number. She picked up on the first ring. "Fiona, how lovely. Of course bring Lily over. We'd love to have her." Her voice was bright, brighter than usual. That should have been my first warning. I knelt in front of Lily, straightened the collar on her red dress, and handed her the gift box. "Grandma Judith's going to take care of you tonight, okay? Me has to go save someone at work." Lily hugged me at the door. Her breath came out in a white cloud, 28 degrees and dropping. "Come back before midnight, Mom. I promise." I didn't keep that promise. The ER on Christmas Eve is a specific kind of chaos. It smells like antiseptic and cinnamon. Someone always brings cookies and they sit on the nurse's station getting stale while we run. That night we had a 3-car pileup on Route 17, a toddler with a febrile seizure, 2 alcohol poisonings, and Greg's empty chair reminding us we were short-handed. I moved on autopilot. Start the IV. Check the monitor. Update the chart. Next patient. My hands knew what to do, even when my mind kept drifting 10 minutes south to Judith's house, where my daughter was sitting at a table full of people who shared her last name, but had never once asked how she was doing in school. At 10:17 p.m., I finally got a 90-second break. I pulled out my phone behind the supply cart. 3 missed calls from Lily. 1 text, sent at 9:43 p.m. "Mom, please come get me." No context, no emojis. Lily always used emojis. My thumb was already on the callback when the phone connected, but it wasn't Lily's voice on the other end. "Fiona, it's Judith." Calm, measured, the voice she used at church fundraisers. "Lily's fine. She's just being a little dramatic. She's playing with the cousins now. Focus on your shift, honey." I heard nothing in the background. No kids laughing, no music, just the low hum of a dishwasher. "Can I talk to her?" "She's in the other room. I'll have her call you later." She hung up before I could push. I stared at the phone. Then Tanya called a code blue in Bay 4, and I ran. It wasn't until 12:40 a.m., changing out of my scrubs in the locker room, that I scrolled back to Lily's text and noticed the photo she'd attached. I'd missed it during the chaos. It was dark, blurry, taken from a low angle, like she'd held the phone against her lap and tapped blindly. I could make out a corner of a room, the edge of a dining chair, and on Lily's chest, the bottom of something rectangular. Cardboard, maybe. With black writing I couldn't quite read. I zoomed in. My fingers went cold. I could only make out two words: family and disgrace. I was in my car in under 3 minutes. The porch light at Judith's house was off. Every other house on Maple Ridge Lane had their Christmas lights blazing, but 414 was dark, like the party had packed up and pretended it never happened. I knocked. Then I knocked harder. Judith opened the door in her silk bathrobe, reading glasses pushed up on her head, as if she'd been settling in for the night, like it was perfectly normal for my 10-year-old to still be here at 1:20 in the morning. Fiona, goodness, you could have waited until... I stepped past her. The living room smelled like cinnamon and dish soap. The long dining table had been cleared, chairs pushed in neat. The only thing out of place was my daughter, sitting on the love seat in the far corner of the room, her red velvet dress wrinkled, her eyes swollen, and her hands resting on a piece of cardboard in her lap, like she'd forgotten it was there. The sign was roughly 12 by 18 inches, cut from a shipping box, written in thick black Sharpie, the same looping cursive Judith used on her Christmas cards every year. I would know that handwriting anywhere. Family disgrace. Lily looked up at me and didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. Hours of everything. I crossed the room, knelt in front of her, and gently lifted the sign off her chest. The yarn they'd used to hang it around her neck had left a red line on her skin. I folded the sign once, twice, slipped it into my coat pocket. Then I looked at Judith. She stood in the doorway of her own living room with her arms folded, chin raised, waiting for me to yell. I didn't yell. I picked up my daughter, carried her to the car, and buckled her in. I closed the door quietly. I walked around to the driver's side, started the engine, and pulled away from 414 Maple Ridge Lane without saying a single word to Judith Mercer. Not because I had nothing to say, because what I had to say, I would say with paperwork. Lily didn't speak for the first 4 minutes of the drive. I didn't push. I turned the heat up to 78 and pointed the vents toward her side. Her hands were like ice when I'd lifted her. Then, somewhere between the gas station and our street, she started talking. Quiet, flat. The way children speak when they've been told their feelings don't count. I said something at dinner, Mom, about Uncle Derek. What did you say? I heard him on the phone last week, at Grandma's house when I was in the hallway. He was talking about taking money from my college thing, the one Grandpa set up. He said he needed it for something. I didn't understand all of it. She paused, pulled at a thread on her dress. At dinner, Aunt Karen was talking about how Uncle Derek just bought new stuff for his truck, and I said, "Is that from my college money?" I didn't mean to be bad. I just asked. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. Then what happened? Everyone got really quiet. Uncle Derek said I was making things up. Grandma Judith said I was a liar, and I needed to learn what happens to liars in the Mercer family. She got the cardboard from the garage and wrote on it. She made me wear it. She told everyone not to give me food until I apologized for lying. Did anyone say anything? Anyone at all? Aunt Karen laughed. The cousins went to the other room. Nobody said anything, Mom. I pulled the car over on Birchwood Drive, 3 blocks from our house. I unbuckled, leaned across, and wrapped my arms around my daughter. She was trembling. Not crying. Just trembling, like her body had used up all its tears hours ago. Lily, you are not a liar. You told the truth, and I am so proud of you. Mom, am I a bad person? No, baby. You are the bravest person I know. She fell asleep against my shoulder before I pulled into our driveway. I carried her inside, made her a peanut butter sandwich, sat on the edge of her bed while she ate it in half-conscious bites, and read 2 chapters of The One and Only Ivan until her breathing slowed. Then I closed her door, walked to the kitchen, and did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I looked at the box on the top shelf of the hall closet, the one labeled Ryan, Documents. The one I'd shoved up there the week after the funeral and never opened because every time I saw his handwriting I couldn't breathe. I pulled it down. But first, coffee. Because what I was about to do required a very clear head. The box was a standard banker's box, white cardboard, Ryan's handwriting and blue ballpoint on the side. Inside, life insurance paperwork I'd already dealt with, our marriage certificate, Lily's birth certificate, a bundle of photos from our honeymoon in Shenandoah, and at the very bottom, a manila envelope sealed with clear packing tape. The envelope was heavier than I expected. I slid it open with a kitchen knife. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a certified copy of a quitclaim deed, dated April 14th, 4 months before Ryan's accident. It transferred full ownership of the property at 26 Birchwood Drive. Our house, the land, everything. From Ryan Mercer to Fiona Mercer. Signed by Ryan, notarized, stamped by the clerk of the Circuit Court for Henley County, Virginia. The second was a printout from the county recorder's website confirming the deed had been filed and recorded. Official, legal, done. The third was a handwritten note on yellow legal paper, folded twice. Fiona, this house is yours and Lily's. I took care of it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. R. I read it 3 times. The handwriting blurred the 3rd time because my hands were shaking. Not from sadness, from something harder to name. Something between fury and relief, and the aching wish that he could have told me in person. For 3 years, I had lived in this house believing it sat on Mercer family land, that Judith could revoke our right to be here with a single phone call. That belief had kept me quiet through every passive-aggressive remark, every cold shoulder at family dinners, every time Judith reminded me that this property has been in the Mercer family for 2 generations. It was in the Mercer family. It was in my name. I opened my laptop, navigated to the Henley County Property Records portal, and typed in our address. The screen loaded. Owner of record, Fiona A. Mercer. I closed the laptop, picked up Ryan's note, held it against my chest for a long moment. Then I set it down, opened a fresh browser tab, and searched. Virginia property owner rights, occupant removal, 30-day notice. It was 3:47 a.m. on December 26th. My daughter was safe in her bed, and for the first time in 3 years, I knew exactly where I stood. On my own ground. The phone rang at 8:02 a.m. I was on my second cup of coffee, sitting at the kitchen table with a legal pad full of notes, and Lily was still asleep. Caller ID, Judith Mercer. I let it ring 4 times. Then I picked up. Not because I wanted to talk, because I wanted to listen. Fiona. Her voice was warm, concerned, perfectly calibrated. The voice of a woman who had rehearsed her opening line. I was worried about you. You left so abruptly last night without even saying goodbye. That's not like you. I said nothing. Listen, I know the situation with Lily might have seemed harsh, but that child needs structure, Fiona. You coddle her. She made a very serious accusation at the dinner table, in front of the entire family, and she needed to understand that actions have consequences. I let the silence stretch. Judith filled it, as I knew she would. Derek already explained the account situation. He borrowed a small amount temporarily. He's going to pay it back. It's a family matter, Fiona. Lily had no business bringing it up in front of everyone. She embarrassed him. She embarrassed me. There it was. Not Lily was hurt, not I went too far. Lily embarrassed her. I hear you, Judith. Good. So we can move past this. And Fiona? Her voice dropped half a register, the way it always did when she reached for her leverage. I shouldn't have to say this, but you do live on Mercer property. It would be very unfortunate if this kind of drama made that arrangement complicated. I looked at the quitclaim deed on the table in front of me, at Ryan's handwriting, at the county recorder's stamp. I understand, Judith. Thank you for calling. I hung up. She would replay that conversation in her head later and think she'd won. She'd think the threat had landed, that I was, once again, the quiet daughter-in-law who knew her place. She had no idea I'd just recorded every word. Virginia is a one-party consent state. I saved the file, time-stamped it, and added it to a new folder on my desktop. I named the folder Red. Derek texted at 10:14 a.m. No greeting, no punctuation, Just venom. Who does your kid think she is? She eavesdrops on private conversations and then runs her mouth at Christmas dinner? You need to teach that girl her place. Fiona, I screenshotted it. Timestamp. Sender. Saved. A second message, 40 seconds later. If you make this into a thing, I will tell everyone about your mental breakdowns after Ryan died. Mom has it documented. Don't test me screenshot. Save. I didn't bother wondering whether Judith actually had any documentation. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Derek, in writing, had just confirmed two things. He was afraid of what Lily said, and his first instinct was to threaten. A third text. Without the Mercer family, you're just a night shift nurse with a kid who lies. Remember that screenshot? Save. I was halfway through organizing the folder when Grace called. Her voice had that tight, controlled quality she used when she was furious on someone else's behalf. Fiona, are you online? Have you seen Facebook? I hadn't. I opened it. Karen Mercer, Derek's wife, had posted 40 minutes ago in the Henley County Community Fellowship Group, 312 members. The post read, "Sad to share that our family gathering was disrupted this Christmas by a family member who chose to alienate a loving grandmother from her only grandchild. Please keep Judith in your prayers as she navigates this painful situation. Family should come first." 47 likes, 12 shares. A comment from someone named Brenda. "This is why family values are disappearing. Praying for Judith." I screenshotted the post, the comments, the share count, the timestamp. All of it went into the red folder. Grace said, "What are you going to do?" "Nothing, online." "And offline?" "I'm calling a lawyer." Grace showed up at noon with 2 coffees, a bag of cinnamon bagels, and a coloring book for Lily. That was Grace. She never arrived empty-handed, and she always thought about the kid first. Lily was on the living room floor, still in her pajamas, quiet but okay. She'd eaten breakfast. She hadn't mentioned last night. I hadn't pressed. There would be time for that conversation, with a professional in the room, not just me fumbling through it. Grace and I sat at the kitchen table with the door cracked, so we could hear Lily humming along to something on her tablet. I laid out everything: the sign, the photo, the texts from Derek, the call from Judith, Karen's Facebook post, and, finally, the deed. Grace picked up the quitclaim deed, read it twice, and set it down slowly. Ryan did this? 4 months before the accident. He never told me. Because he knew. Grace looked at me. He knew his family, Fiona. And he made sure you'd have ground to stand on, literally. I stared at the yellow legal note in his handwriting and felt something crack behind my sternum. Not grief. I'd burned through the worst of that years ago. This was something closer to gratitude, sharp and aching. "You need Nathan Cordero," Grace said. "Real estate and trust law. My ex used him during the divorce. He's thorough, he's fast, and he doesn't do drama. He does documents." "I don't want a war, Grace. I just want Lily safe." Grace reached across the table and put her hand on mine. "This isn't a war. This is protecting what's yours. Ryan already handed you the shield. You just have to pick it up." I called Nathan Cordero's office at 12:34 p.m. His assistant said he could see me the next afternoon, December 27th, 2 p.m. I took the appointment. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat in the dark living room with the Christmas tree still blinking and the red folder in my lap. 7 items and counting, every one of them time-stamped. Every one of them backed up to the cloud, to a USB drive, and to a printed copy in an envelope I gave Grace to hold. I didn't know yet what Nathan Cordero would find when he looked deeper into the Mercer family's finances, but I had a feeling that what Lily overheard was only the beginning. To understand why I stayed quiet for 3 years, you need to understand the Mercer family. Ryan was the eldest son, the responsible one, the one who paid the property taxes on his mother's house when she forgot, the one who drove 4 hours to fix the plumbing on Thanksgiving weekend, the one who co-signed Derek's car loan when Derek was 23 and had already defaulted on a credit card. Derek was 5 years younger and operated under a different set of rules entirely. When Derek lost a job, it was bad luck. When Derek needed money, it was temporary. When Derek showed up to Christmas dinner with a new leather jacket and no explanation, nobody asked questions. Because asking questions in the Mercer family was considered a form of aggression. Ryan saw it. He never said it that bluntly, but I could read between the lines of what he told me. One night, about a year before he died, he said, "My dad set up a 529 for Lily, 47,000. Mom's listed as custodian because I was deployed when Dad filed the paperwork, but it's Lily's. I need you to know that." I asked why he was telling me like it was a warning. He just squeezed my hand and said, "Because my family loves the idea of money more than they love the people it's supposed to help." Harold Mercer, Ryan's father, died 2 years before Ryan. After Harold's passing, Judith became the gravitational center of the family, and her gravity had a preference. Derek was the moon she pulled closest. I was the comet she tolerated for orbit, useful, distant, and expected to burn out quietly. When Ryan died, the first thing Judith asked me, not at the funeral, at the hospital, while I was still wearing the clothes I'd slept in for 2 days, was, "What's happening with the life insurance?" Not "How are you?" Not "How's Lily?" The life insurance. I used that money to pay Ryan's medical debt and keep Lily and me afloat. Judith suggested I share a portion with Derek, who was struggling. I said no. It was the only time I'd ever refused her directly, and she never forgot it. From that point on, the temperature dropped. Gradually, then all at once. Fewer invitations, shorter phone calls, comments at family gatherings just loud enough for me to hear. "Lily's getting so quiet. I wonder where she gets that from." And always underneath everything, the reminder, "You're living on Mercerland, Fiona. Don't forget who made that possible." I didn't forget. I just didn't know yet that it wasn't true. Nathan Cordero's office was on the second floor of a converted brick building on Main Street, above a bakery. The whole stairwell smelled like sourdough. It was the kind of detail my brain grabbed onto because the rest of me was running on 4 hours of sleep and an anxiety level I was managing through sheer professional discipline. He was mid-40s, neat desk, no family photos, just diplomas, and a Virginia state flag in the corner. He shook my hand, gestured to the chair, and said, "Tell me everything. Start with the property." I set the red folder on his desk and opened it like a patient chart. Deed first. Nathan examined the quitclaim deed for 2 minutes without speaking. He checked the notary seal, the recording stamp, the grantor and grantee lines. Then he pulled up the Henley County property records on his own screen, typed in the address, and turned the monitor toward me. "Ms. Mercer, this deed is valid and properly recorded. You are the sole legal owner of 26 Birchwood Drive and the 0.8-acre parcel it sits on. There is no encumbrance, no lien, and no co-owner." I exhaled. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. "Now," he said, "tell me about the 529. I told him what I knew. Harold Mercer set it up for Lily, $47,000. Judith listed as custodian. Ryan believed the money was untouched. Lily overheard Derek talking about withdrawals. Nathan pulled up the 529 custodial account portal, asked me for the information I had, Lily's social security number, Harold's name as original contributor, and submitted an inquiry request to the financial institution managing the plan. "We'll have full transaction records within 5 to 7 business days," he said. Then he paused, pen hovering over his legal pad. "How much do you expect is left?" "I don't know." Lily heard Derek say he needed it. I'm hoping she misunderstood. "And if she didn't? Then I want every dollar accounted for." Nathan nodded and wrote something down. Then he looked up. "One more thing. I ran a standard check on your property. Your address, 26 Birchwood, is currently listed under a homestead exemption. Do you know who filed it?" I didn't file a homestead exemption. I didn't even know what one was until Nathan explained it. A tax reduction for a primary residence, claimed by the property owner. Except I hadn't claimed it. Someone else had. "The filing is in the name of Judith Mercer," Nathan said, "using your address." The room went very quiet. The sourdough from downstairs suddenly smelled like something burning. "What does that mean?" "It means your mother-in-law has been claiming a tax benefit on property she does not own for approximately 3 years. He paused. "That's tax fraud, Ms. Mercer, at the county level." I sat in Nathan's chair and did the math without meaning to. 3 years of reduced property taxes on a home she didn't own. 3 years of a benefit she wasn't entitled to. Filed quietly, probably within weeks of Ryan's death, when I was too gutted to notice anything that didn't involve keeping Lily fed and showing up for my shifts. She hadn't just controlled me with the threat of taking the house away. She'd been profiting from the house, my house. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. Nathan pulled up the county assessor's website. Henley County's homestead exemption reduces annual property tax by roughly $2,800. Over 3 years, that's approximately $8,400 in back taxes owed, plus penalties, usually 25%. So we're looking at around $10,500 that Judith Mercer owes the county. He let that number sit. "Miss Mercer, I want to be clear about your options." He ticked them off on his fingers, the way I'd seen surgeons count instruments. 1. You can send a 30-day notice to anyone occupying your property without authorization. That includes Derek's workshop on your land. 2. You can file a report with the county assessor regarding the fraudulent homestead exemption. 3. Depending on what the 529 records show, you can pursue civil action for the misappropriated education funds. Each of these is independent. You can do 1, 2, or all 3. I looked at the folder on his desk, the sign, the texts, the deed, the voicemail. "All 3, I said. "And everything goes by certified mail." Nathan paused his pen for the first time since I'd sat down. He studied me the way I studied patients who came in calm with a wound that should have had them screaming. "I've been doing this for 20 years, he said. "Family property disputes, trust issues, fraud cases, but 3 violations from the same household against the same person, that's not common." "I'm an ER nurse, Mr. Cordero. I don't panic. I triage." He almost smiled. "Then let's get this in writing." He opened a fresh legal pad, uncapped his pen, and we spent the next hour drafting 3 documents that would land on Judith and Derek Mercer's doorsteps by New Year's Eve. That night, after Nathan's office, after I'd picked Lily up from Grace's apartment and made us both grilled cheese with tomato soup, Lily's comfort order, I sat at the kitchen table at 11 p.m. and built my arsenal. I'm a nurse. I know how to chart. I know that documentation isn't just record keeping. It's the difference between a case and a story. And I was done telling stories to people who only heard what they wanted. I opened the red folder and laid everything out in chronological order. The quitclaim deed, recorded and stamped. The county property records printout. Ryan's handwritten note. The 529 account inquiry receipt from Nathan's office. Lily's text message and blurry photo from Christmas night, time-stamped 9:43 p.m. The cardboard sign, family disgrace. In Judith's handwriting, now sealed in a gallon Ziploc bag. The recorded phone call from Judith, December 26, 8:02 a.m. 3 screenshots of Derek's threatening texts, 10:14 to 10:16 a.m. Karen's Facebook post, and its 12 shares. The homestead exemption filing in Judith's name at my address. 10 items, each one labeled, dated, and stored in 3 locations. Cloud backup, USB drive in my bedside drawer, and a printed set in a sealed envelope at Grace's apartment. Nathan had prepared 3 outgoing documents. A 30-day notice to vacate addressed to Derek Mercer at the workshop on my property. A demand letter addressed to Judith Mercer for the full return of misappropriated 529 funds. And a formal complaint to the Henley County Assessor regarding the fraudulent homestead exemption. Each one ready for certified mail, return receipt requested. I paper-clipped the tracking slips to the front of the folder and closed it. There was one more thing I'd decided, something Nathan hadn't suggested. When I mailed the certified letters, I wouldn't just drop them at the post office. I would walk in, hand them across the counter, and watch the clerk stamp them. I wanted to feel the weight leave my hands. It wasn't about revenge. Revenge is loud. This was something quieter. This was consequence, addressed and postmarked. I want to pause here for a second. If you've been listening this far, you're probably sitting somewhere right now with your jaw tight and your chest heavy, because you've either lived this or you've watched someone you love go through it. I was right where you are. Sitting at this table, folder closed, heart open, terrified, and certain at the same time. If this story is hitting home, tap that like button so I know you're still with me. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your child safe, leave a comment. I'll read everyone. Now, back to December 28th. The Henley County Post Office on Route 12 was quiet the morning of December 28th. One clerk behind the counter, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a beaded chain, humming something I almost recognized as silver bells. I set 3 envelopes on the counter, each one white, legal-sized, with Nathan Cordero's return address printed in the upper left corner and the recipient's name typed cleanly below the window. Certified mail, return receipt requested. All 3. The clerk weighed each one, printed the green certified labels, and affixed them. She stamped each envelope with a satisfying thud, the kind of sound that reminds you the Postal Service has been delivering consequences since 1775. Envelope 1, 30-day notice to vacate, addressed to Derek Mercer, at the workshop structure on 26 Birchwood Drive. Envelope 2, demand letter for the return of $42,800 in misappropriated 529 education funds, addressed to Judith Mercer, at 414 Maple Ridge Lane. Envelope 3, formal complaint to the Henley County Assessor's Office regarding fraudulent homestead exemption filing by Judith Mercer. I paid $23.70 in postage. The clerk handed me 3 tracking receipts. I photographed each one, texted the tracking numbers to Nathan, and slid the receipts into the red folder. 3 envelopes, combined weight, less than 2 ounces each. But when they arrived, and they would arrive, because certified mail always does, they would carry the weight of every night I'd bitten my tongue at Judith's table, every time Derek had smirked at me across the room, every whispered, "Remember whose land you're on." I walked back to my car in the cold December air. My breath came out in clouds. The sky was that flat Virginia gray that means more cold is coming. I checked the USPS tracking app before I started the engine. Estimated delivery? December 30 to 31, right around New Year's Eve. There was something poetic about that. A year ending, a silence breaking, and 3 envelopes making their way through the system, unstoppable and indifferent, the way consequences ought to be. The property dispute was one thing, the money was another. But there was a layer underneath all of it that I couldn't address with certified mail. The fact that my daughter had been emotionally abused by a family member in a room full of adults who did nothing. I am a registered nurse. In the state of Virginia, I am a mandated reporter. That means if I have reasonable cause to suspect a child has been abused or neglected, I am legally required to report it. There is no exception for family. There is no exception for Christmas. On the afternoon of December 28th, after I dropped the envelopes at the post office, I called the Henley County Department of Social Services Child Protective Services hotline from my parked car. I gave them my name, my credentials, and a clear, factual account of what happened on December 25th. A 10-year-old child was publicly humiliated, forced to wear a degrading sign, denied food for approximately 6 hours, and isolated from other children as punishment for speaking the truth. I provided Lily's time-stamped photo from 9:43 p.m. I provided the physical sign, now preserved. I provided Judith's name, Derek's name, and the address where the incident occurred. The intake worker assigned a case number. A caseworker would contact me within 48 hours to schedule a child interview, with my consent, in an environment where Lily felt safe. I also called Lily's pediatrician that afternoon and got a referral for Dr. Amara Singh, a licensed child psychologist who specialized in family-related emotional trauma. First available appointment, January 3rd. I took it. I reported hundreds of suspected abuse cases during my career. I've called the hotline from curtained ER bays at 2 in the morning, whispering so the parent in the waiting room wouldn't hear. It never gets easier. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't calling about a stranger's child. I was calling about mine, and my hand didn't shake once. That evening I did something radical. I put the folder away. Not forever, just for the night. Because my daughter needed mac and cheese more than she needed a mother hunched over legal documents. And I had spent enough of the last 3 days being strategic. Lily deserved a few hours of me being just mom. We made it together. She stirred the cheese sauce while I boiled the noodles, and she told me about a book she was reading, The One and Only Ivan, about a gorilla in a mall who finds a way to change his life through a drawing. She talked about it the way she talked about everything she loved. Fast, with her whole body, hands gesturing, eyes wide, completely alive. Mom, Ivan doesn't yell at anyone. He just draws the truth and people finally see it. I almost dropped the colander. We ate on the couch with the Christmas tree still plugged in. I hadn't taken down the decorations, Normally I would have by now, but something about those little blinking lights felt necessary. Like the house needed to remember that Christmas had started out okay, even if it ended somewhere terrible. Lily leaned into me, her plate balanced on her knees, and said, "Can we just stay like this?" "Like what?" "Just us, in our house, with the lights on." "Yeah, Lily, we can stay exactly like this." She fell asleep against my arm around 8:30. I carried her to bed, pulled the quilt up to her chin, and kissed her forehead. She smelled like cheese and shampoo, and 10 years of the best thing I'd ever done. I stood in the hallway outside her room for a moment, listening to her breathe. Then my phone buzzed. USPS tracking update, envelope 1, status, out for delivery. Estimated arrival, December 30th, tomorrow. I turned off the hallway light, walked back to the kitchen, and let the silence settle around me like armor. Nathan called at 9:15 the next morning, December 29th. His voice had the same measured tone it always did, but I was starting to learn the difference between his confirming information voice and his "you need to hear this" voice. This was the second one. "Miss Mercer, 2 updates. First, the county assessor's office has received your complaint. They've opened a review. Standard timeline is 10 business days for the initial assessment. If they confirm the homestead exemption was filed fraudulently, Judith will receive a notice of back taxes owed plus a 25% penalty, payment due within 90 days of the notice." I wrote the dates in the margin of my legal pad. 10 business days from December 28th, put the assessment around January 13th. Second, I've submitted the records request for the 529 custodial account. The financial institution confirmed receipt and will release full transaction history within 5 to 7 business days. Once we have that, we'll know exactly how much was withdrawn, when, and to what account. And if it's what we think it is? Then you have 2 options. A demand letter for voluntary repayment, which we've already sent. If they don't comply within 30 days, I file a civil action in Henley County General District Court. Given the amount, over $40,000, this goes beyond small claims. We'd be looking at a hearing, possibly a default judgment if they don't respond. How long would that take? If they don't contest, 6 to 8 weeks from filing to judgment. I did the math. Demand letter sent December 28th. 30-day deadline, January 27th. If no payment, Nathan files late January. Judgment by mid-March. Do it, I said. And Nathan, if they call your office trying to negotiate before the 30 days are up? I'll listen, but I don't negotiate without documentation of ability to pay and a signed repayment agreement. I'm not in the business of handshakes. Neither am I. Not anymore. I hung up, checked the USPS tracker one more time. Envelope 2 now showed in transit to destination, and circled January 27th on the kitchen calendar in red. 30 days. The clock was running. December 30th, 11:47 a.m., USPS, tracking updated. Envelope 2. Delivered. Signed by J. Mercer. I stared at the screen for exactly 4 seconds. Then I set the phone down, face up on the kitchen table, and waited. 43 minutes. That's how long it took. The first call came at 12:30 p.m. I didn't answer. Judith's voice on the voicemail was something I'd never heard before. Shrill, fraying at the edges, like someone who'd just discovered that the ground they'd been standing on belonged to someone else. "Fiona, what is this? You sent me a demand letter? Through a lawyer? Over some misunderstanding about Lily's account? Call me back, right now." Voicemail. 2:12:38 p.m. Louder. Less polished. "I am your mother-in-law. I raised the man you married, and you send me legal paperwork the week after Christmas? Do you have any idea how this looks?" Voicemail 3:12:51 p.m. And this was the one I saved twice, on my phone and on the cloud, because Judith Mercer, the woman who had spent 3 years telling me that my daughter was a liar, said the following. "Derek used that money to pay off his debts. I authorized it because he was in trouble, and that's what family does. I was going to put it back. It was a loan, Fiona. You're making this into something it isn't." I played it back. I authorized it. Not Derek acted alone. Not there's been a mistake. I authorized it. The woman who had forced my child to wear a sign that said, "Family Disgrace," for telling the truth about stolen money had just admitted, on a recorded voicemail, that she knew about the stolen money all along. I time-stamped the voicemail. I added it to the red folder. And I did not call her back. Some evidence you have to chase. Some evidence just panics and runs straight to your phone. New Year's Eve, the kind of cold that makes the mailbox latch stick. USPS tracking, 10:22 a.m. Envelope 1, delivered. Signed by D. Mercer. Derek didn't call. Derek drove. At 11:40 a.m., I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway, followed by a truck door slamming hard enough to rattle the Ring doorbell camera I'd installed 6 months earlier, originally because of a package thief, but God works in useful ways. I was in the kitchen. Lily was at Grace's apartment for the morning. I did not go to the door. He knocked. Then he pounded. Then he yelled, "Fiona, open this door! You can't do this! This is Mercer land! This workshop has been here since Dad was alive! You have no right!" The Ring camera recorded everything. I watched on my phone from 10 feet away, Derek, red-faced, pacing the porch, the certified letter crumpled in his fist. I called Henley County Non-Emergency Dispatch. "My name is Fiona Mercer, 26 Birchwood Drive. There's a man on my property who's been served a 30-day vacate notice and is now banging on my door and yelling. I'd like an officer to come ask him to leave." The deputy arrived in 12 minutes. I watched through the window as Derek went from screaming to sputtering to silent in the span of a single conversation with a uniformed officer. The deputy examined the notice, checked my ID, confirmed the property records on his in-car system, and told Derek to leave the premises. Derek jabbed a finger toward the house, toward me, and said something I couldn't hear from inside. The deputy wrote something in his notepad and repeated calmly that it was time to go. Derek left. I requested a copy of the incident report. Case number 2024-1231-0087. Date, December 31st. Documenting, verbal disturbance, trespass after notice. 2 hours later, Grace texted me a screenshot. Derek had posted on his personal Facebook. "My sister-in-law just had the police called on me for going to my own family's property. She hired a lawyer and is trying to throw us off land that's been Mercer property for decades. All because her kid made up a story at Christmas. Please share so people know the truth. Hashtag family first. Hashtag injustice." 214 shares by midnight. I didn't post a response. I didn't comment. I didn't share. I just screenshotted everything, added it to the red folder, and watched the fireworks from my living room window while the clock struck 12. New year, new rules. The first 3 days of January felt like walking through a town that had already made up its mind. Judith's church friends had shared Karen's post into 2 more community groups. Derek's Facebook rant had hit the local buy-sell trade page. The narrative was clean and simple. Heartless daughter-in-law kicks grieving grandmother and beloved uncle off family land over a Christmas misunderstanding. No mention of a sign, no mention of a hungry child, no mention of $42,000. I noticed it first at the grocery store. Mrs. Liu from the PTA avoided eye contact at the deli counter. Then at work, a nurse from the day shift I barely knew said, "I heard things are rough with your in-laws. I'm sorry." The pity in her voice told me she'd only heard one version. The texts from extended Mercer relatives came in waves. Ryan's aunt. "Judith is devastated. She's barely eating. Is this really necessary?" Ryan's cousin. "You should think about what Ryan would want. He wouldn't want the family torn apart." A number I didn't recognize. "Shame on you for keeping a grandmother from her grandchild." I read everyone, responded to none. Then, on January 2nd, as I was pulling into my driveway after a 12-hour shift, I saw Mrs. Patterson standing at her mailbox next door. She was 70-something, widowed, the kind of neighbor who noticed everything but said very little. She'd lived on Birchwood Drive longer than anyone. She looked at me differently than the others, not with pity or judgment, more like recognition. "Fiona," she said, just that. Then, "I saw something on Christmas night, at Judith's house. I should have done something then, and I didn't. But if anyone ever asks me, I'll tell them exactly what I saw." She turned and walked back inside before I could respond. I sat in my car for a full minute, engine off, staring at her closed door. Then I added her name to the red folder's contact list, not as a weapon, but as a witness. There's a difference. The town had heard one story, Mrs. Patterson had seen another, and the system, slow, methodical, indifferent to Facebook shares, was still turning. January 2nd, 3 p.m., the CPS caseworker arrived at my home. Her name was Ms. Tate, mid-30s, calm presence, the kind of person who listened with her whole posture. She asked if she could speak with Lily in the living room while I sat in the kitchen. I agreed. Dr. Singh had already met with Lily the day before and said she was processing well, but I'd prepped Lily simply. A nice lady is going to ask you about Christmas night. You just tell the truth, like you always do. The interview lasted 22 minutes. I could hear murmuring through the wall, Lily's voice quiet but steady. No crying. When Ms. Tate came out, she sat across from me at the kitchen table and spoke in the neutral, careful language of someone documenting facts. Your daughter's account is consistent and detailed. She described the sign, the food restriction, the duration, and the family members present. She also described the events leading up to the punishment, specifically that she repeated something she overheard about a financial account. Ms. Tate paused. This is sufficient to open a formal investigation into emotional abuse and neglect, specifically public humiliation, food deprivation, and psychological intimidation of a minor. Judith Mercer and Derek Mercer will be named as subjects. Then she told me something I wasn't expecting. We received a second report this morning. A neighbor, a Mrs. Patterson on Birchwood Drive. She contacted our office independently. She states she witnessed your daughter being brought outside to the front porch at approximately 9 p.m. on Christmas night, in freezing temperatures, wearing only a dress. She heard an adult female voice. She identified it as Mrs. Judith Mercer, shouting at the child, and she provided a cell phone video. Ms. Tate let that sit. The video is 23 seconds. It was taken through Mrs. Patterson's kitchen window from across the yard. It does not clearly show the child's face, which protects her privacy. But it does capture the voice, the timestamp, 9:07 p.m. on December 25th, and the approximate conditions. I pressed my palms flat on the table. 23 seconds of footage I didn't know existed, from a witness I hadn't asked, corroborating everything my daughter said. Judith had spent a week telling anyone who would listen that Lily was a liar, that I was unstable, that this was a misunderstanding. 23 seconds doesn't misunderstand anything. Ms. Tate explained the next steps. The investigation would include attempted interviews with Judith and Derek, a review of the evidence, and a determination within 30 days. During that period, the subjects would be advised that unsupervised contact with Lily was not recommended. I walked Ms. Tate to the door. She shook my hand and said, "Your daughter is articulate and brave. You should know that." "She gets it from her father," I said. And meant it. I need to stop here for a moment. Because when Ms. Tate told me about Mrs. Patterson's video, I sat in my kitchen and stared at the wall for a long time. Not because I was surprised someone saw, but because I was gutted that someone saw, and almost didn't speak up. Mrs. Patterson did, though. Late, but she did. And it mattered. If you're still here, subscribe, not for me, for the part of the story that's coming. Because what happens next is the part where the certified letters start doing their job, and the people who thought they were untouchable find out they're not. Stay with me. January 15th, a Tuesday. I was between patients at the hospital, charting in the break room, cold coffee, fluorescent lights, when Nathan called. County assessor completed their review. The homestead exemption filed by Judith Mercer on your property has been determined to be fraudulent. She had no ownership interest in 26 Birchwood Drive at any point during the filing period. I put my pen down. Effective today, the county is issuing a notice to Judith Mercer for back taxes totaling approximately $8,400, plus a 25% civil penalty of $2,100. Total due, $10,500. Payment deadline, 90 days. I didn't say anything for a moment. Nathan waited. He was good at that. She's going to say she didn't know. She signed the form, Ms. Mercer. Annually, for 3 years. The assessor's office has her signature on file. 3 signatures. 3 years of claiming a tax break on a home she didn't own, a home she used as a leash to keep me compliant. Every time she'd said, "Remember whose property you're on," she'd been collecting a discount on it. Nathan continued. The notice will be mailed to her address at 414 Maple Ridge Lane. Sincerely doubt she'll be in a festive mood when it arrives. He was right. Judith called my phone 4 times that evening. I didn't answer any of them. The voicemails were a study in deterioration, the first one indignant. "This is your doing, Fiona." The second one bargaining. "We can work this out if you just drop the complaint." The third one threatening. "I will tell everyone what kind of person you really are." And the fourth one something I'd never heard from Judith Mercer in all the years I'd known her. Silence. 12 seconds of open line. Then a click. That silence told me more than all her words ever had. It was the sound of a woman realizing that the system doesn't care about your reputation, your church group, or how many people shared your daughter-in-law's smear campaign on Facebook. The system cares about signatures. And Judith's were on file. January 20th, Nathan's office. Same sourdough smell in the stairwell, different weight in the room. He had a printed spreadsheet waiting for me on the desk, 4 pages, each line a transaction. The 529 custodial account records had come back. 23 withdrawals, Nathan said, turning the first page toward me. Over an 18-month period, beginning June of last year and ending November. Total withdrawn, $42,800. I looked at the columns. Date, amount, receiving account. Every single withdrawal routed to the same bank account, a personal checking account at Valley Federal, in the name of Derek P. Mercer. The custodian authorization was signed by Judith Mercer, Nathan continued. She granted Derek direct access to the account, which under 529 regulations is only permissible for qualified education expenses of the named beneficiary, in this case, Lily. And none of this went to Lily's education. Not a cent. The withdrawal descriptions are blank. No tuition invoices, no textbook receipts, no school supply documentation. These were straight cash transfers to Derek's personal account. $42,800. My father-in-law Harold, a man who had worked overtime at a paper mill for 30 years, had saved that money so his granddaughter could go to college. And it was gone. Funneled into whatever hole Derek had dug for himself, with Judith holding the shovel. "What do we do?" I asked, though I already knew. The demand letter gave them until January 27th to return the funds. As of today, we've received no payment, no response, and no communication from their attorney, if they have one. On January 28th, I file a civil action in Henley County General District Court. Complaint for conversion and breach of fiduciary duty. We're requesting return of the full $42,800, plus attorney's fees, court costs, and the 10% IRS early withdrawal penalty, which Judith, as custodian, is personally liable for. He slid a document across the desk. The filing was already drafted. Total judgment will be seeking approximately $46,350. I signed the authorization. January 27th came and went. Not a dollar arrived, not a phone call to Nathan's office. Nothing. On the morning of January 28th, Nathan filed the complaint. The court doesn't shout. It stamps, it files, it dates. And then it sends a man to your door. January 31st, a Friday. The process server arrived at 26 Birchwood Drive at 2:14 p.m. Derek was in the workshop. He'd been dragging his feet on moving out, still within his 30-day window, but clearly testing every edge of it. The workshop door was open. I could hear his music from the kitchen, some country station, turned up too loud, the way people do when they're pretending everything is fine. The process server was a compact man in a gray jacket, entirely unremarkable, carrying a manila envelope that was about to rearrange Derek Mercer's year. He walked across the gravel, knocked on the workshop doorframe, and said Derek's full name. I watched from the kitchen window. I'm not proud of how closely I watched, but I'm not sorry either. Derek stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at the envelope. He looked at the process server. His face cycled through confusion, irritation, and then something deeper, recognition. The recognition of a man who had been expecting this moment on some level, but had convinced himself it wouldn't actually come. What is this? Civil summons, Henley County General District Court. You've been named as co-defendant in a complaint for conversion and breach of fiduciary duty. You've been served, sir. Derek didn't take the envelope. The server placed it on the workbench, noted the refusal on his form, and walked back to his car. Under Virginia law, the service was valid. Mrs. Patterson was at her mailbox. She saw the whole thing. She didn't wave at Derek. She didn't look away either. She just stood there, holding her mail, bearing witness the way good neighbors eventually do. Derek called Judith. I know this because within 20 minutes, Judith's silver Buick pulled up to the edge of my driveway and stopped, because the gate was closed. I had installed a simple latch gate across the driveway entrance the week before. Nothing dramatic, just a metal gate with a padlock that said, clearly and legally, "This is private property, and you need permission to enter." Judith stood outside that gate for 4 minutes. I timed it. She gripped the metal rail with both hands. She looked at the house, my house, with an expression I had never seen on her face. Not anger, not indignation, fear. She got back in her car and drove away without a word. I closed the kitchen curtain, sat down at the table, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in 5 weeks. January 30th was the deadline, 30 days from the notice to vacate. Derek's lawyer, a bargain rate attorney Judith apparently found through a church contact, had advised him in writing to comply. I knew this because Nathan received a copy of the council's letter, which essentially said, "My client acknowledges the property owner's legal right to possession and will vacate the workshop premises by the stated date." The tone was stiff, the letterhead was generic, and between every line I could read the subtext. We have no case, and we know it. Derek showed up at 8 a.m. with a rented U-Haul trailer and the kind of furious silence that men default to when they've lost control of a situation they never actually controlled. He loaded tools, scrap wood, a workbench, 2 space heaters, and what looked like several months' worth of energy drink cans. He did not knock on my door. He did not make eye contact with the Ring doorbell camera, though it captured every trip between the workshop and the trailer in crisp 1080p. Grace came over at 10. She brought coffee and stood next to me on the front porch, not to gloat, just to be there. That was Grace's whole philosophy. You don't have to do hard things alone. At 12:17 p.m., Derek closed the trailer hatch. He walked to his truck, opened the door, then turned and looked at the house one more time. "You're going to regret this, Fiona," he said. Not shouting, his voice was flat, tired. "You have no family now." Grace, still holding her coffee, tilted her head. "You forgot the trash bags in the corner. Want me to toss them, or should I bill you for disposal?" Derek slammed the truck door and pulled out. I walked into the empty workshop. It smelled like motor oil and sawdust. There was damage, a hole punched in the drywall, a cracked window pane. I photographed everything, dated it, and sent it to Nathan. If needed, it would become part of the property damage claim. I locked the workshop door with a new padlock, stood there in the cold, keys in my hand, and looked around at the 0.8 acres that Ryan had quietly, carefully deeded to me before he ran out of time. Ours. Fully, finally, unchallengeably ours. In the weeks that followed, the consequences arrived the way consequences usually do, not all at once, but in a steady, documentable sequence that made the Facebook narrative very difficult to sustain. Judith's homestead exemption fraud resulted in a county bill of $10,500. She had 90 days to pay. She did not have $10,500. I know this because Nathan received a letter from Judith's newly hired attorney requesting a good faith extension on behalf of his client, citing unexpected financial hardship. The county assessor does not negotiate good faith. They negotiate payment plans with interest. CPS completed their investigation in mid-February, finding substantiated emotional abuse and neglect by Judith Mercer against a minor child. Derek Mercer was listed as a contributing party. The recommendation: no unsupervised contact with Lily, pending completion of a court-approved family counseling program. Judith did not enroll. Derek's civil judgment came down in March. He didn't show up to court. Nathan requested a default judgment, and the judge granted it. $42,800 in misappropriated 529 funds, plus $3,200 in attorney's fees and court costs, plus the applicable IRS penalty. Total, $46,350. Nathan began wage garnishment proceedings the following week. Derek, who had just started a warehouse job, would be paying that judgment back for years. Karen, Derek's wife, found out during the court proceedings exactly how much of Lily's college fund Derek had drained and where it had actually gone. She didn't post about it on Facebook. She moved back to her mother's house in February and filed for legal separation in March. I didn't take pleasure in that. I understood it. The extended Mercer relatives went quiet. Not apologetic, just quiet. The kind of silence that settles over a family when the smear campaign hits a wall of notarized documents, court records, and a county tax bill. Nobody shared Derek's Facebook post anymore. It was still up, technically, but facts have a way of making noise feel very small. The call came the first week of February. A Saturday morning. Lily was at the kitchen table drawing, and I was washing dishes. When I saw Judith's name on the screen, I dried my hands, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door. I picked up. One last time. Fiona. Her voice was different, smaller. The polish was gone. No church voice, no rehearsed warmth, just a 62-year-old woman who had lost her oldest son and was now watching the rest of her world follow. I know I don't have the right to call you. You don't. A long pause. I could hear her breathing. I made a mistake. With Lily, with the sign. I was angry and I went too far. I know that now. I waited. Please, she's all I have left of Ryan. Don't take her from me. I closed my eyes. Not because I felt sorry for her, though part of me understood the grief underneath the cruelty, but because I had to say the next words very precisely, and I didn't want emotion in any direction to blur them. Judith, I'm not taking Lily from you. I'm protecting her from what you did. Those are not the same thing. Silence. When you're ready to work with a family therapist, a licensed professional, not Pastor Dave, and when you've completed the counseling program CPS recommended, you can contact Nathan Cordero's office to discuss supervised visitation. You do not contact me. You do not contact Lily. You go through the process. Fiona? That's my boundary. It is not negotiable. I hung up. The call lasted 47 seconds. I know because I checked the call log afterward and added it to the red folder. Force of habit. I sat on the edge of my bed for a minute. My hands were steady, my jaw ached from clenching. The house was quiet except for Lily humming in the kitchen, something from a cartoon, I think, slightly off-key and entirely perfect. Family is not a sign around a child's neck. Family is the person who takes it off. In March, I opened a new 529 account. Same state plan, same goal, different custodian. Me. I transferred the remaining $4,200 from the original account, what was left of Harold's $47,000, into the new one. It wasn't much. It was a fraction of what Lily was supposed to have. But it was clean, and it was protected, and no one had access to it except me and the financial institution. Nathan set up the wage garnishment order on Derek's paycheck. The math was simple and relentless. A percentage of every check, automatically deducted, routed to a recovery account tied to the judgment. Derek would be paying back what he stole for a long time. The court didn't ask whether he was comfortable with that. Courts don't. I also met with a financial advisor through the hospital's employee assistance program, free for staff, something I'd never used because I'd never had the headspace. She helped me set up an automatic monthly contribution to Lily's new 529, $150 a month. Small, but consistent. At 7% average growth, compounded over 8 years, Lily would have a meaningful start when she turned 18. It won't be $47,000 by then, the advisor said. It doesn't have to be. It just has to be hers. That same week, I went back to Ryan's box one more time. Not for documents, for the letter at the very bottom, the one I'd noticed on December 26th, but hadn't been ready to open. It was sealed, with Lily, 18th birthday, written on the front in Ryan's blocky print. I broke my own rule. I opened it. And I read it standing in the hallway, one hand on the wall, because the floor felt unsteady. Lilybug. If you're reading this, you're 18, and I probably owe you an explanation for a lot of things. But here's the one that matters. You are worth every good thing this world has to offer. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't deserve a seat at the table. Your mom and I made sure you'd always have a place. Trust her. She's the toughest person I've ever met, and she doesn't even know it. I love you past the moon. Dad. I refolded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in the box next to the deed. For the first time in 3 years, I cried. Not the drowning kind, the kind that washes something clean. April arrived the way it does in Virginia, slowly, then all at once. One morning, the dogwood outside our kitchen window was bare sticks. The next, it was covered in white blossoms that made Lily press her face to the glass and say, "It looks like it snowed flowers, Mom." I finally took down the Christmas lights on the first Saturday of the month. Lily helped, standing on a step stool, carefully unwinding each strand. She asked if we could leave one string up year-round, just the little ones, by the front door. I said yes. Some lights are worth keeping. She was seeing Dr. Singh every 2 weeks now. The therapist told me Lily was processing with remarkable resilience, which in plain language meant my daughter was tougher than anyone had given her credit for. She'd started a journal, not because anyone told her to, but because she wanted to. She said writing things down helped her put them somewhere that isn't my chest. At school, she'd joined the 5th grade book club. Her first recommendation to the group was the one and only Ivan. Her teacher emailed me. Lily presented the book to the class today with a confidence I haven't seen from her before. She said it's about telling the truth even when it's hard. She's becoming a real voice in this classroom. The workshop, Derek's workshop, I spent a weekend cleaning it out. Grace helped. We patched the drywall, replaced the cracked window, swept the sawdust. Lily stood in the doorway when we were done and looked around. "Can this be my art room?" We painted it together the following weekend. Pale blue walls, because Lily said blue was the color of thinking. I hung a pegboard for her supplies and put a desk by the window where the light was best. Grace came for dinner every Thursday. She'd bring dessert. Lily would set the table. The 3 of us would sit in the kitchen, eating and talking about nothing in particular. School, patience, whatever Grace was watching on TV, and every time I'd look around the table and think, this is what safe looks like. Not loud, not perfect, not a performance for anyone else. Just 3 people in a house that had their name on it, with the doors locked and the lights on. Saturday morning, May. The kitchen smelled like butter and maple syrup because Lily had decided she was old enough to flip pancakes by herself, and she was mostly right. Only one landed on the stovetop. We sat at the table by the window. Sun came through the glass in warm slats across the wood. The dogwood was in full bloom. Lily was barefoot, hair still messy from sleep, drawing on a paper napkin between bites. I watched her work, tongue slightly out, brow furrowed, the same face Ryan used to make when he was concentrating. She drew a house. Simple. Rectangle, triangle roof, a door with a round knob. 2 stick figures out front, one tall, one small. A tree beside them with pink circles for blossoms. Across the bottom, in careful block letters, "Our house." She slid it across the table. "For you." I picked it up, looked at the 2 figures, at the tree, at the 2 words that said more than any legal filing, any court judgment, any voicemail saved in a red folder on a shelf. "I love it," I said. "I know exactly where this goes." That afternoon, I opened Ryan's box one more time. I placed Lily's napkin drawing inside, next to the deed, next to his letter, next to the yellow legal note that started everything. The box wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't something I avoided on the top shelf of the closet. It was proof, not of what we'd lost, but of what we'd walked through. Judith never called Nathan's office. Maybe she would someday. Maybe she'd do the work, and maybe there'd be a supervised visit at a therapist's office, and maybe Lily would decide what she wanted that relationship to look like. That was Lily's choice to make, when she was ready. Not mine, not Judith's, not Derek's. The red folder sat on the bookshelf in the living room, closed. I didn't hide it. I didn't display it. It was just there, the way a fire extinguisher is there. You hope you never need it again, but you keep it where you can reach it. I took a bite of pancake. Lily was already drawing something new, this time a gorilla with kind eyes, surrounded by other animals, all of them free. The lights by the front door blinked once, then held steady. We were home. Thank you for staying until the end. This story is fiction, but the feeling of being betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, that's as real as it gets. If you're out there right now, setting a boundary for the first time, or thinking about opening a box you've been avoiding, or just trying to keep your kids safe in a world that doesn't always help, I see you. You're not alone. Like this video if it meant something. Subscribe if you want more. And check the description below. There's another story waiting for you. Also about a mother. Also about a piece of paper that changed everything. I'll see you there.